My name's Dawn and this is Freya.
Hi everybody. So today is part 3 in our Exploring a Neurodivergent Diagnosis series. So hopefully you've already listened to part 1 and part 2. If you haven't, go and check them out.
Straight away.
Yeah, indeed. But today we are talking about what it's like as a parent or a carer to get a diagnosis for your child or young person. And we're going to be exploring lots of different things around that. But first, it's time for that chaotic clarity moment from both of us, Dawn.
Yes.
So go on, what's your chaotic and clarity moment?
We have little matchy ones, don't we, Freya?
We do have some. Go on.
Yeah, so my chaotic moment recently. So we've just come back from Ibiza for 2 weeks holidaying. And I came
She hasn't
back.
mentioned it at all.
No.
I hardly know. I hardly know.
No. I came back to a big pile of brown scary letters. And they were all related to my car. So the first one I opened was a parking ticket from ages ago outside the salon, and there was like a court date and everything in it. I thought, bloody hell, it was only £25, but it's just, why don't you pick it up and do it tomorrow? I'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Tomorrow never comes. So that was that one. And then there was another letter also backing up that I had a court date. So that was another one. And then I did an illegal U-turn in Manchester Airport. So that was a £70 fine for that one. And then I opened the next letter and I'd parked in the Premier Inn, Manchester Airport, and I forgot to pay. So that was another fine for that one. And then I opened the next letter. And there was another parking fine because I remember that I left the car park, went to pick Steve up and came back to the car park and still didn't buy a parking ticket. So yeah, I mean, at this point, Steve was high-fiving me on the most amount of bloody fines you could get in 2 weeks.
Beautifully done.
Oh, and then I had no insurance. I got another one because it thought I am insured. I've always been insured. I forgot to change my number plate on my car. So obviously I actually wasn't insured, was I?
No.
But I changed it straight away. So yeah. Yeah, well done, Dawn. Well done, me.
That is a lot of chaos.
Thank you.
Dawn.
Thank you.
That is a lot of chaos.
Yes, that cost me a lot of money that day.
Yeah. So weirdly, Dawn, mine is surprisingly similar. So yesterday I went to the post box and I had 4 letters for me, and I was like, oh, well, this is interesting. I don't often get 4 letters. So the first one was you haven't paid your Mersey toll fine or your toll fee. So I was fined for that. The second one was you didn't pay your Mersey toll fine on the road home. So I went over one way on the other way. And the most annoying thing about that is as I drove over the Mersey toll, I called my husband and I said, I'm driving over the Mersey toll. I will forget to pay this. Please, can you set a reminder on Amazon to pay it? So Alexa set the alarm. So when I got home later that evening, Alexa reminded me to pay my Mersey toll. And you're all thinking to yourself, well, how did you get the fine? Well, I opened my phone to pay the toll, but the Mersey toll system on the phone at that exact moment was having some work done or repair. So I had to go back in 10 minutes. Now, I didn't reset the Alexa to remind me to come back in 10 minutes. So, of course, that 10 minutes went past. I didn't go back.
Yeah.
In my head, because I sort of remembered to have done it, in my head it's checked off, it's done, until the delights of those 2 letters came through informing me that delightfully I did not in fact pay my Mersey toll.
Jesus.
And then I opened the next 2 letters, Dawn, and the third letter was you've been caught speeding. Not even, only a tiny bit over the speed limit, going at a certain place around 6 o'clock. And then the 4th letter was a second speeding ticket in exactly the same place at exactly the same time. So clearly when I drive home at that time, I like to drive desperate to get home after a busy day. So that was my chaotic moment. So I love that. One of my favorite things about, I mean, obviously it's sad for both of us that we had to pay all of that money out and all of those things. And actually the speeding and the non-insurance is probably not great for thinking about role models and being a successful adult. But when I told you, your reaction was, oh my goodness, I've got loads of those letters too. And I was like, oh, which one of us is like, oh my goodness, that's so cool. But then, Dawn, my moment of clarity came. And my moment of clarity is, how many times are neurodivergent people having to pay fines or having to bear the cost of something because their executive function doesn't work like a typical person's brain? And I was thinking about loads of examples. So subscriptions, it's free for the first 7 days and then cancel after 7 days, and you don't then pay the next annual thing.
Yeah, I never cancel it.
Oh my goodness, how many times have I done that? Free returns. Oh, I'll order 2 dresses. I can order 2 sizes and I'll send one of them back because it's free returns. No, you just end up with 2 dresses.
Yeah, and selling it for 50p on Vinted.
Oh, you see that? I don't even get that far.
No, I don't.
I don't even get that far. No,
I don't either. I think about it.
I might put it in a bag to take to a charity shop, and then the bag will be down by my front door for a good period of time. Then it will move to the car for a good period of time. Yeah. And then it might get to a charity shop at some point in a distant future. Yeah. So there's that tax. But then actually, so it's like a neurodivergent tax that neurodivergent people have to pay because they make mistakes. They don't pay tolls when they should. They park in places where they shouldn't. They forget about things. They maybe do something impulsively, or, all of those things. Yeah. And I was just thinking, actually, how many times, and I think particularly the one that does particularly irk me is the toll road thing, because you're driving over it and then you have to pay in the next 24 hours. I feel that's
stupid.
I do. I feel it's specifically targeted at people that are going to forget. Yeah. And those with ADHD, I bet they're the majority of people that end up paying.
We need to do a research on that.
That would be an amazing piece of research. And then we could go to those toll roads that do it and say, actually, this isn't a discriminative practice.
Yeah. And do you know what I love? I love it when you drive through, you stop and you throw your change, or you.
I love
that. They're amazing because you don't have to worry.
Or the M6 toll, you drive through and you beep, beep, boop your little card, or you swipe it through, and then you're done, and you don't have to think about it again. Yeah.
I know. Let's get rid of the tolls.
I'm rid of the tolls that you've got 24 hours to pay. It's like, I may as well just drive through going, and I'm going to be paying £25.
Throw it out the window as you just drive past.
As it goes through. So that's my moment. So all of that chaos, my moment of clarity is about, actually, it's really unfair how sometimes that neurodivergent tax kicks in. Yeah. And all of those things.
And then also, I can hear my dad in my head now saying, well, why do you get all these parking tickets? You're bloody choosing to park on a double yellow dawn. It's your own fault. Oh, why don't you just pay it when you get your ticket? And I've got them in work. It's like an art on my wall. There's so many bloody tickets. I'm actually clear at the moment. But people say, well, why don't you just pay it when you first get it? And I said to him, because I'm neurodivergent, Dad, if it was that simple,
I'd have done
paying that ticket, you might as well ask me to walk Snowdon. Because that's kind of like what it feels like. I'll do it in a minute. And we put it off, don't we?
Yeah.
And people just don't understand. Yeah. And I can't explain it either.
So with my speeding fine ones, I knew I had to reply within so many days. So that kind of put the fear of God into me, especially because obviously I hadn't got them out of the post box the day the post was delivered. Obviously, I got them out of the post box probably about a week after the post was delivered.
Let's open up and be honest now. Yeah.
So there was something about me having to do it. So I didn't do it at that time because I knew I wasn't able to do it. I knew that would be too much kind of cognitive load to do it that day at that time, because I was shocked from all of the 4 delightful letters of neurodivergent taxing joy. But it was then I knew I had to do it. So in my head, I scheduled it like an appointment that after lunch the day after, I would do those. I would address and do all of those things. And although I didn't technically body double, I told my husband, Rick, I am doing this now. And I kind of almost and I messaged him when I'd done each one. Yeah. I have done this one. I have done this one. I have done this one. So so I felt like it was like he was there doing them with me. It wasn't actually as overwhelming as I thought it was going to be. It was actually okay, but it was actually quite irritating as well. Yeah. And I still haven't had the information back about what the outcome of the speeding fine is. Is it going to be do I have to do a course? Do I get points? Do I get fined? Do I get all 3? What do I get for both of them? Because they're like matching. So anyway, we'll wait and see. Maybe we'll update that on another podcast coming soon.
I know.
But yeah, so I think for me, all of those things, there are additional stresses, there are additional money, there are additional things that neurodivergent people, as a general, obviously neurotypical people do have to experience these things, I'm sure. But I bet, like you said, if we did some research, I bet the neurodivergent community would be heavily weighted in those 100%. Areas.
And I think the neurotypical people would get a fine, either ring and argue it and want to find out, hang on a minute, and or they would just pay it that day. Yeah. People go, oh, I just pay it on the day. Sorry, I heard something. They just pay it on the day. That's just like really weird to hear that.
I would love to be able to do that and go, yes, of course, I opened it. I processed it, I did the action, and it was done.
Yeah. Went online, paid it, fine, done. No, I have to wait until a court date is sent to me in a letter. Wow, Dawn, wow. The £25 ticket turned into 105.
I know, and that's what's so frustrating.
I know, which is my own fault.
I know,
I parked on double yellows. And then I'm surprised that they're giving me a ticket.
How very dare they? How very dare they?
Thank you, Nora.
So back to the topic of today's topipic.
Enough about us.
Well, there's never enough about us, Dawn. I think you and I could both talk for hours and hours and hours.
No. I'm shocked.
Shocked and amazed. So today, as I said, what we wanted to do with this series is think about how and why the experiences that people have when they pursue a diagnosis. So today is all about children and young people. So it's thinking about it from a parent's perspective or a carer's perspective, but we'll also be thinking about it from sort of that child or young person's perspective as well sometimes. So what are the things you might need to think about when you're talking to a young person if they're going to have an assessment? What are the things you might want to think about, when you get that outcome, when you get a diagnosis, how you might want to kind of navigate some of those conversations. But I suppose there can be a number of reasons why a parent or a carer or somebody might start to think of why they might want to explore a diagnosis for their young person or their child. So we're going to explore a few of those different reasons, and some of those might resonate with some of our listeners, and you might think, gosh, that's prompted me to think about why I need to have an assessment for my young person. Or you might be like, oh gosh, that was exactly the reason why I thought it was really important. So Dawn, what are some of the things that you think as a parent, lots of other parents of neurodivergent children, what are some of tell me one of the main reasons that you think somebody might decide to go down the route of an assessment and that could lead to a diagnosis?
So when I'm talking to people, what I'm hearing a lot is that they know, or they think they know, that their child is neurodivergent.
Yeah.
Oh, they are definitely on the spectrum. That's like what I hear. But they don't need a diagnosis. They don't need a diagnosis. Oh, they're fine. And obviously, like some people are. I'm not saying they're not. And I do hear that a lot. But then when they're talking to me about their child, maybe they're not fine. Mm-hmm. So for me, I think it's a really good thing for a parent. And actually, I think a lot of parents sometimes struggle with the whole process. They can do, like, did I do something wrong, especially with the paracetamol at the moment?
Oh, my goodness.
I know. Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's another whole podcast on its own.
Don't get
so
me
much.
Started.
I know. There's so much mum guilt around it.
Yeah.
Well, there can be.
Yeah.
I actually don't have any. Well, I used to, but I don't anymore. But Good, yes. But yeah, I think there's a lot of different reasons. I think the main one is that their children struggle most in school.
Yeah.
That's what I hear a lot. But then I think some parents do also struggle with the thought of stepping into the assessment. I think once it's done and they're going through it, it's absolutely lovely. But the idea of it's quite scary. So I think this is really important today, because if parents are listening, they need to know there's nothing wrong with your child. You haven't done anything wrong, and it's okay. Yeah. And you will feel better. Your child will feel better.
Yeah, definitely. And research has shown those children that have diagnoses early actually go on to have better mental health outcomes.
Oh yeah, I can imagine.
Because what they do, instead of kind of thinking, oh my goodness, I can't do the thing that all my peers can do, that must mean I'm rubbish or I'm crap, or oh my goodness, or it's my fault, or I'm all of these negative things. They might go, oh, I can't do the things my peers do. Of course I can't, because my brain's different, because I'm autistic, or I have ADHD, or I have both.
Yeah.
And my friends don't have that. But I can do these other things that my friends can't do. So that identity piece can be really, really important for young people.
Yeah.
So so for one of the reasons, and I agree 100%, that's a lot of why people come to, maybe come to me to have an assessment for the young person, is thinking about, actually a young person is struggling in school. They maybe need additional support at school. They need some reasonable adaptations, and whether that's to access their learning, whether that's to support in their friendship groups, but there's something there that's going to help them. So I think that's a really important thing.
Yeah, definitely. Because obviously my children have all had assessments. So do you want me to kind of like talk a little bit about that
just
in case
wonderful.
People, I mean, I know my clients probably already know because it's all I go on about, but so my middle child was actually the first to go through the assessment, and he was actually quite young. I think he was 5 when school called me in. It was very much school led, which actually is amazing, really, isn't it? I didn't really know much about autism back then. I didn't really know much about ADHD. It was like 11 years ago.
Yeah. And you're not supposed to.
No. Isn't it crazy though, in 11 years, how much it's changed?
Yeah.
So yeah, I kept constantly getting called into school because his anxiety was horrendous. His social skills were, well, non-existent. He really struggled with friendships. It was just, he was really, really, I would say, going down the route of being mentally poorly. And he'd be hiding under tables. He'd be having panic attacks, and he was 5. I just don't think that's right for a 5-year-old to even know what a panic attack is. And I remember being shouted at outside the school gate once. A parent who he was friends with his son, and a parent approached me, and I said hi, and just laid into me, really shouting at me. It was a man as well, so it kind of like, I was crying. It was embarrassing. I was like, oh my God, all these parents are looking at me.
But also quite frightening, I'd imagine.
It was frightening. Yeah. It was frightening. The school actually rang me to apologise. They'd heard what had gone on. It wasn't acceptable. And I mean, he wasn't threatening, but he still made me feel really awful. Yeah. And it was because obviously my son was being too intense with his son. He'd not hurt him. He'd not done anything wrong. He just he didn't know his spatial awareness.
Yeah.
So he'd like talk really close to people.
Yeah.
Which obviously was inappropriate, but so that was really heartbreaking, because I could see Kelly, my son, watching me getting told off. Yeah. And I just thought something needs to be done.
Yeah.
And luckily the school had already kind of like pressed me on it anyway.
Yeah.
And we said we'd leave it for 6 months, because I just thought maybe it's a phase.
Yeah.
I did. I thought it's just a phase. You need to change your teaching strategies.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with my son. It's just you. That's kind of like how I felt at the time. But obviously how wrong I was, by the way. And I do really regret that attitude. But I was.
But that's what I'm saying. You were doing what felt right at the time.
In that time,
yeah.
Exactly. And then I was recommended to this man, a private assessment in Cheshire. And he was brilliant. And he said straight away, in fact, no, Cams said to him straight away, you have Asperger's. So Kelly was like, what's that? And so they were really lovely, and they explained it to him. So I never even had to go through explaining to him what it was, because they did it all. But yeah, he got a private diagnosis, and that's the best thing ever, obviously. Yeah, he understands himself now. I mean, he's grown out of some of those traits when you're younger.
He's changed. He's grown up.
He's matured.
All children grow up.
Yeah, absolutely. He has different struggles now, but yeah, getting that diagnosis, honestly, I couldn't imagine what he'd be doing now if he didn't have that diagnosis. I couldn't imagine, because he struggles with his mental health even with the diagnosis.
Yeah.
Could you imagine that pressure on top as well of not understanding his brain and not having the extra help in school and stuff? Yeah, so that was my first.
And your first experience down the neurodivergent highway of diagnosis and assessment.
Yeah. And interesting, that's when I kind of learned more about myself, because I was going through the assessment, I was thinking, oh, I do that. And also my eldest child, when we were going through the assessment, she did every single tick box, lining up as a child. Because Kelly actually never did any of that, but my daughter did. So that was also interesting. And then it was quite obvious then that my eldest was also autistic.
Yeah.
But we never really needed a diagnosis, is how we felt.
Yeah.
Until she got to 16, 17, there was a lot of changes. COVID had happened. She'd started college. And she'd started struggling with food. Obviously, like, we know that that's a control thing. She was really anxious, very hypervigilant, writing down car number plates, for example, But that's when I met you, Freya.
Ta-da!
So yeah, and then I just got to the point where she needed it for her, not for me. We all knew. And once we started discussing it with her, it was like a light bulb moment to her.
Yeah.
And obviously we introduced it to you, and then the rest is history really with her. So so that was a very different experience. Because actually through her childhood there wasn't the social issues like my son had.
Yeah.
But obviously learning that she'd completely masked for her whole life, and obviously kept that anxiety in.
Yeah.
So that was really sad. I should have done something about it earlier, but hindsight again is great, isn't it? So then by the time I got to the third Freya, I thought, no, we're not waiting. We're not waiting for the mental health issues.
Yeah.
We're gonna, and obviously with my youngest, she's a very different kettle of fish, as we know. She's my little pocket rocket. She's a dancer, can't sit still. Her biggest issue was emotional regulation. She really struggles to contain her emotions.
Yes.
Whether it be anger, sadness, like everything's catastrophized. Is that how you say that word? Yeah. So again, we thought, okay, let's not let this get to a peak. Let's not let this get to a head. Let's kind of like talk to someone about this now. And then obviously again, Freya, in Doctor Superhero Freya.
In she comes.
And again, you only have to meet her, don't you, for 5 minutes to know that she's most definitely neurodiverse.
Yes.
But she also struggled with feeling different. She couldn't do a lot of things that everybody else could do. And she'd say, what's wrong with me? That was a lot that she used to say to me. What's wrong with me? Why can't I do that? There's something wrong with me. And I wasn't going to let her grow up thinking there was something wrong with her, because there isn't. So, yes. So for me, that...
Yeah, 3 really different stories.
Yeah,
Dawn.
and
I think
different stories.
I'm sure parents and carers out there will really resonate with, one or some of those stories. So it might be that, that the first thing that you might hear is actually school has concerns.
Yeah.
And that might be the trigger for why you might decide to have an assessment. Or it could be actually you've kind of known that your young person's a little bit different, a little bit quirky, but you haven't felt the need for a diagnosis or an assessment until maybe other underlying things maybe come to the surface. In your daughter's case, it was eating, but for other young people, it could be maybe more anxiety, it could be more low mood. So there could be other things that are starting to kind of come to the forefront. And then it could also be actually that sometimes that neurodiversity is just quite apparent, especially with ADHD. If it's lots of energy, all of those positive, wonderful things that come with ADHD.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
But sometimes some of those barriers and those tricky bits that can come with it as well, that feeling emotions extremely intensely. So definitely, So there's lots of different reasons. And obviously everybody's, every parent's journey will be different. Some parents might think, do you know what? I really need a diagnosis because it will get me that legal protection so my child can get what they need at school. Other parents might be wanting a diagnosis, and these are, this is the conversations that I have with parents when I'm doing assessments with their children. It might be, I don't care what the outcome is. I just need to know what's going on for them. It's more about the whole formulation, about that personal profile, rather than it is the label. And then other people, it's just more about actually I need to kind of figure out how best to support them and how best I can advocate for them. Yeah. So there's going to be lots of different reasons and lots of different things that people will experience on their journey through that kind of thing, and trying to then decide. I suppose one of the questions I was going to ask you, Dawn, is what was the final point where you kind of thought, so with your last one, you said no, I was like, the clear decision point was, right, I'm not going to let this have this, be this, have this impact. What were some of the other times when you kind of thought, right, we're ready for this diagnosis now. We're ready for this assessment.
With the other?
Yeah.
So
what was that kind of like final deciding point that you went?
It was being shouted at outside school for that was definitely because also for the year before, school had been calling me in saying, we need to get him extra help. And, and that's when I was in my stubborn era of, he doesn't need help. You just need to teach better. Do you know what I mean?
You're not wrong on there. Their teaching needs to change to be adapted to support your son. You're not you're not 100% wrong in that one, Dawn.
I know, but I think I was a bit offended that they were saying this, like there was something wrong with him. Yeah. That's kind of, but then obviously when I was getting phone calls to go and pick him up because he was having panic attacks under the table, and he has a really strong attachment to me and he hated us being apart. And then when he was getting no friends, when he had no friends and he's now in year 6 and he still has no friends, it was like, that's the heartbreaking. And I just thought, you're not doing this for anyone else apart from him, Dawn.
Yeah.
You know, so that's why at that point I thought, okay, I need to do this for him.
Yeah.
And I felt selfish holding back from him getting that diagnosis, because that diagnosis then leads on to specific help that he needed.
Yeah. The doors that opens, and
yeah,
that
exactly,
kind of,
and the extra help that he could get, and the understanding as well from people around him.
Yeah, no, so important. Yeah, no, I really like that. And what was the final bit for your second child, when your second assessment? What was that kind of the tipping point for you? That you were like, right, we're going down that assessment route right now.
It was the low mood and the eating, and she had her personality had dulled. She's quiet anyway, but it had gone like next level quiet, and she wasn't happy, and she was constantly like, she didn't want to leave her room. And I remember just saying to her, should we speak to someone? And she literally nearly grabbed my hand off with yes. And again, she changed overnight. Once I talked about autism with her, and, you know, we've always known that you may be autistic, but, you know, what do you think? Does this? And obviously, like, kids nowadays, they've got TikTok and Google and whatever. It's great, isn't it?
Yeah.
And straight away she said, Mummy, this literally is like they're writing about me. I have rituals. I mean, we didn't know about any of this, by the way. This was all internal for her. She had rituals. You know, there was possibly a bit of obsession starting, especially with the food and like the way things were. And, you know, there's hardly any of that now. So that's good, isn't it? But that was the tipping point of seeing her downward spiraling. Yeah. Really low mood. Yeah. Really low mood and high anxiety. And it wasn't like her. I just thought, okay.
Yeah. So you felt at that point, actually, that's when it's going to be its most helpful, because she needs to understand her own self.
She'd started college as well, actually. I've just remembered. She'd started college. College actually called me in, and they said, she's extremely quiet. We're actually very worried about her. Is she okay? I think they were probably just doing a parent check. And I was like, she's really quiet anyway. Also, just to let you know, we've always kind of thought that she's autistic. And they said, oh, we're so happy you said it. We didn't know how to approach you with that, because we were going to say she's definitely autistic. They've actually been doing some assessments on her, and she had to have a reader and extra. And I just thought college were absolutely amazing.
Oh, brilliant. That's really lovely to hear when there is.
So it kind of like solidified the decision of us obviously going to see you. So thank you, college. But yeah, they were really good. So that's.
And I think those actually conversations, if there are sort of like teachers out there who are listening to this, I think those conversations with parents are so important. Yeah. How you approach them with that kind of gentleness, that curiosity. Yeah. We're wanting to know, we're wanting to think about how we can support it. Because again, I think sometimes it can either go one of two ways with conversations with other people, whether that be at school or whether it be, close family, friends. If you start exploring it as a parent and saying to somebody, I think my child might be, a little bit different. There might be, so have some traits of this condition or that. How people respond to that is really important. So sometimes there can be like oh, it's fine. You don't need to worry about it. They're fine here, or you're just being this, or just being that. But also that kind of the other side of things, like not wanting to kind of say, oh, you need to get this child assessed immediately because it's a dreadful thing and Yeah. So I think it's about that. For me, it's always about, if someone's presenting that to you and you're having that conversation, it's about that curiosity. What are they like? How can you help? How would a diagnosis or an assessment help? What are you looking for in that? What are all the things that you would hope for your child if they got a diagnosis? If they didn't get a diagnosis after a big assessment, what would that mean? What, all of those kind of things. So it's that curiosity, that gentleness, that kindness that we always talk to one another about.
Oh, Tilly.
For those that are listening and not watching on watching the podcast, Dawn's dog Tilly has just come and joined the podcast and has jumped up and said hello. So she's obviously in a lot of agreement with us.
Because Tilly's autistic, obviously, as we know. Aren't you, Tills? Yes, yes. Right, I'm going to let her out, actually, because... Come on, Tills. I know that's what you want. Go on, baby. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. I had to let the dog out. So, Freya, what is the difference? Because I've actually never attended an assessment when you've done my children. What is the difference between an assessment for a child versus an assessment for an adult?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So What we're looking for, so you still would do a developmental history. So that doesn't necessarily change. I suppose it just gets longer depending on how old the child, the young person, or indeed the adult is, because they're older. So if I'm doing a developmental history for someone that's 5, I've only got to talk about how they've been since they were 5. If I'm doing a developmental history with someone who's 16, I've got to do all those years until they're 16. Just doing one with an adult, I've got to do the whole childhood and all of that. So those are the things so the developmental history, as I said, doesn't necessarily change. It just extends depending on the age of the person you're assessing. But when you're doing a developmental history, what you're wanting to do, particularly when you're talking to parents, is kind of find out what kind of like they were like as a baby. So again, you're not looking for specific, did they stop eye contact at 4.3 months old, and that did you notice that? What you're looking for is what kind of they were like as a baby. So it's all that lovely qualitative information. Were they particularly easy to leave? Were they more clingy? Did you notice facial expressions and smiling? If you walked into the room, would they, as they were a toddler, if they were playing and you walked into the room, would they look up at you and smile? So you're asking lots of different questions about social communication, about their play, about their friendships, how they are at school, their interests, their routines, their energy levels. So again, if you're looking at a full neurodiversity assessment, I always ask questions about attention, hyperactivity and impulsivity. But the younger a child is, particularly those under 5, I'm always really cautious about giving an ADHD diagnosis under 5, because actually lots of little ones can struggle to pay attention. So we're always careful with those assessments.
What age would you say you would be comfortable doing an ADHD? Because I've heard a lot of ages around this actually.
So NICE guidance. So NICE is the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence. They suggest you can assess for ADHD at 5, and then kind of go from there. I think between 5 and 7, I've always got a very sort of I'm very hesitant, or unless I'm 100% sure. I mean, I never give a diagnosis unless I'm 100% sure anyway. But I think for between the ages of sort of 5 and 7, I want to be super, super careful. I'm putting everything into context. I might be looking, is there a parent history? Is there a genetic history there? I'd also be checking against, is there any trauma that child has experienced? Because you can see children who present very much like they have ADHD, they then have some, because they've experienced some sort of domestic violence or trauma. And then when they've had therapy for that, they don't present as ADHD anymore, because actually what you were seeing was a dysregulated child. So that's kind of, so we're always looking for all of those things. So as you're doing that developmental history, you're getting the parent or carer to really tease apart all of the things about their young person, things that they're really good at, the things that then make them happy, but the things that they struggle with. But you're also wanting to tease apart what strategies parents have applied. And if they have siblings, are the strategies different for the siblings? So again, sometimes I might, do assessments with a family or a mum, and mum might be saying, they don't have any problems with change whatsoever. And I'm like, okay, fabulous. So give me some examples of what would happen if you're going on holiday. Oh, well, if we go on holiday, what I have to do is, before we go on holiday, I print out a full picture profile of where we're going so I can show them a picture of where we're going. I then do all of this. I then print out a calendar. I mark it down on the calendar so they can count down the days. I get them to try on all their clothes, and I do all this. So actually, when mum's telling me they're fine with change, actually what mum's telling me is I've scaffolded this beautiful autistic friendly environment, so they're actually are fine with this beautiful graded sense of change. So you also want to check those strategies.
What an amazing mum, by the way.
What an amazing mum, what an amazing mum. So we have all those things. So we're wanting to do that. But then we also gather information from school. So, if the child is in school, if they're homeschooled, obviously we don't. We may ask if a child is homeschooled, sometimes they might be part of another club or something, like a drama club or a dance club or a sports club, and we can try to get information from another source. And that's where you would kind of look at, okay, so how are they presenting within that other environment outside of home? So again, it's the same sort of things. What's their energy levels like? How do they respond to adults? How do they get on with their peers? How are they kind of just generally doing in that other environment? one thing I always say to parents when I'm talking about, and I say, well, we're going to send information to school. Some parents, I can almost hear it when I'm having that, initial conversation on the phone. You can almost hear like the sharp intake of breath when I say, and we'll be talking to school, and parents kind of go, oh, school won't say there's any problem. School don't see anything. School have got no problem. School will say there's no problem, so then they won't get a diagnosis.
I actually had the same panic when you said that to me.
It's a very common thing. Parents have been going into school and saying, my young person's really struggling, and school is saying, no, they're fine at school. They're fine at school. And sometimes that might be the case. So I always say to parents, yes, it's important that we gather the information from school, and we do listen to it, and we do take it on board, and we do integrate it into our diagnostic discussions. We do not, however, put as much weight on what school have said as we do what the parent has said and what we've actually observed in that young person. So in terms of the weighting when we're considering that full diagnostic profile, because what we know is sometimes children mask. So actually how they're presenting in school is very different how they present everywhere else, because they're masking and they're keeping a lid on it until they get home, and then we've got the bottle of pop and it's gone out everywhere. Also, sometimes schools tell me there are no problems at school, and then they go, and then I'm reading the information that the school has provided. So, have you got any concerns about this young person? No concerns whatsoever. But then the questions that we ask then kind of go on to elicit, certain responses. So there are two very clear ones that are sticking out in my mind as examples. So one was a little girl that I was assessing, and within her school information, it was absolutely fine, no problems at school. She only has to wear her ear defenders if it gets very noisy.
Right.
So I was thinking, okay, so if there's no problems at all, why does she even have ear defenders if she's having that? And so what's going on there? So that's one always that sticks out in my mind as when school have said there's no problem. And another one was again a school. So the first one was a secondary school. First one was primary. Secondary was the second example I'm going to give today. And again, a school had said, absolutely, this young man has no problems in school whatsoever. At break time, he loves to go and play bocce with his teachers. And I was thinking, okay, so this is fabulous. I'm loving that he's happy. He's playing bocce. He's with his teachers. But really, is that what the majority of 16-year-old boys are doing and are happy at school? So again, sometimes we can, as clinicians, we are given information that says, everything's fine.
Yeah.
But actually, when we're given the information, we start to look through it, we can see, obviously, those are very, very, very clear, not subtle examples. But sometimes those examples are a little bit more subtle. And you can also go and do a school observation where you can go and look at them. And then finally is a young person's assessment themselves. So that is a meeting with the young person. I always... Oh, you can...
so sorry.
Bless you.
Bless me. Sorry. No, it's because you were talking. I was like, me. Sorry.
Sometimes
Freya.
Dawn just needs the attention.
I know.
To her
Okay, I've had my bit now. You can go back.
So in the young person's assessment, I always say we go at their pace. Any good young person's assessment will go at that young person's pace. It will be dependent on their age, their stage. It will never force a young person to do something that they feel is weird or uncomfortable. So there's lots of different things that you can do. So if you're going for an assessment in a CAMS team, you might do your young person might have what's called an ADOS. So that is an autism diagnostic observation schedule. That's where clinicians will do certain things with your young person. They'll ask them questions, they'll talk to them, they might play some games with them. They might do some subtle things like, for example, so Dawn we might be doing a jigsaw together, and I might be telling Dawn to do something, and then I might purposely put a piece of jigsaw away so Dawn would have to physically ask me for it. And what we often see with autistic young people, especially the younger ones, rather than asking me, they will just like dig in to get it and to put that piece there. So there's lots of different things that you can do within that. You also might go and have a QB test. So a QB test is it's not very new anymore, but it's newish. And that's a test that you do at a computer, and it's for ADHD. And it basically has, your child wears a sort of like a headband that has like a marker on it, and they do some tasks, and the computer marks how many times the child looks around, because the headband kind of monitors how many times they are not looking at the screen and how quickly it takes for them to do some responses. So there are assessments out there that are specifically made and standardized for young people. But actually, I think for me, the biggest thing that's always the most important, and this is how we do our assessments, is spending time with that young person.
Yeah.
And really getting to know that young person. So whilst those kind of, those real structured assessments are great, for me, there's one of the parts that I have a little bit of problem with them is they're very deficit. So you're looking for the things that are wrong.
Yeah.
You're looking for the problems. So I think sometimes that makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable, and they're kind of looking at that, well, this is the neurotypical right way of doing something and you're doing it that way, and that's the autistic wrong way.
Yeah.
Whereas I think one of the things now, especially how we do our assessments, it's about really spending time with that young person. So if that young person wants to sit and do drawing as I'm talking to them, I'm not going to stop them drawing. I'm going to let them draw because I know that's comfortable for them.
Yeah.
If I'm doing a young person's assessment in their house and they want to bring down all their Jellycat toys to show me and arrange them and tell me, which one is which and all of those things and why these two go together because they're friends, then I'm going to let them, because that information is so much more rich to me and able to make that decision. So those are the things that you kind of do within the young person. And if the young person is old enough, and parents have had that conversation with them already, I sometimes will ask them, what do you know about autism? What do you know about ADHD? What do you think about those sorts of things? And sometimes, young people are brilliant because they'll say, oh, I know my brain's a little bit different. And my brain's much faster than everyone else's, or my brain is much slower than everyone else's, or my brain is like this, or my brain is like that. Or they might say, oh, I know. So again, a young person I saw recently was brilliant because I said, what do you think about ADHD? Have you ever heard of it? And she went, oh, I know loads about ADHD and I have definitely got ADHD. And I was like, okay, well, why do you think you've got ADHD? And she's like, well, people with ADHD have loads of energy and I've got so much energy and my head is always full of ideas and I'm always moving. So she does like loads of sport. She does loads of dance. And I was like, and what else about ADHD? And she's like, well, I know people with ADHD can't concentrate. I was like, okay, tell me about that. She's like, I can't concentrate at all on anything. And I was like, right. So young people they know their own experiences.
Yeah, isn't that lovely?
And they can tell you about them.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, so for me, that's when we're thinking about what's different. I suppose there's lots of bits that are the same because we're still looking and exploring the same things. And the big thing that should always be the same is, it's person-centered. It's about that whole person in the middle. But for young people, because again, they are young people and they haven't always got their identities formed, they're not always 100% sure. You're also adding in all the information from parents, some information from school, and then you're also maybe doing some tasks that maybe, check in with some of those things. Another one is a social cliffhanger that you sometimes do when you're in assessment. So I'll often say, oh, I've got this really exciting story about my dog.
Oh my Freya, that's evil.
And then you just wait.
And what do they do?
Well, it depends. So sometimes if I say I've got a really exciting story about my dog, the little ADHD child, before I've even got to
I've just done this. Yeah.
So you've got that. Sometimes you've got the autistic child that kind of just is like,
say it.
No, or just, I'm not interested in your story about your dog. Like, I don't, good for you. And they're almost like, you just then sit in this uncomfortable silence for a little while. Well, you're uncomfortable. They're probably not uncomfortable at all. They're just like, whatever.
Yeah.
And you've got an exciting story about your dog. That's great. And then sometimes you get kind of like the silence, and then you get you can almost see the young person go, I know I've got to do something here. What's the story about your dog? And you can kind of like think it almost like they're kind of like that. So there's lots of little things that you can do that you can kind of do during that. But yeah, there's loads of different bits that you can do. And then obviously the diagnostic discussion, it's the same thing. The diagnostic criteria doesn't change as an adult or as a child.
Okay.
You're still looking at those same differences, same kind of, reviewing it. And then, feedback when you've made a decision.
Yeah. So how lovely then to have the opportunity to have the diagnosis when you're younger, because obviously an adult, I was 40, wasn't I? 40-ish. And like, if
no, Dawn, you and I were like 29 when we got assessment.
I know. God damn it. Yeah, we were like 18, weren't we, last year when we did my diagnosis. But how lovely that when you're doing it to a child, those questions are relevant in the moment. So obviously for me, if you would have asked me something when I was 5, I haven't got a clue. My mother's not even got a clue because, you know, she can't remember. So yeah, what a difference getting it done when you're younger.
Yeah, so you can definitely see that. And one thing I've as a diagnostician, I talk about lots of different cases, my own cases, my other clinicians' cases.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting when we had a diagnostic meeting recently, and we were discussing. First, we discussed someone who was about your age. We were doing their assessment, and she was discussing all of the burnout she was feeling, all of the mental health things, all of the abusive relationships she'd ended up throughout her life. And we were kind of talking about, you know, the difficulties that she's experienced for being a non-diagnosed person, not understanding herself.
Which is a reality.
Which is very much a reality for many people. And then the second person we discussed was sort of a teenage girl. And as we were talking about it, you could see the beginnings of what this lady, this older lady had been, not older lady, very young lady at 40, very young lady at 40. You could see the beginnings of what she was talking about.
Yep.
You could see the self-doubt beginning to come into this 16-year-old girl. And you could see some of the negative friendships that she was beginning to develop.
Yeah.
You could see some of those kind of anxieties, low mood coming in. And you could see the trajectory that, you know, without a possible diagnosis, she could go down. And I'm not, you know, I'm never saying that we saved a life that day. But
But you may have.
For me, there's something so important about being able to then, you know, stop, reflect and say, actually, by hopefully giving this person this framework, this understanding and saying, so one, again, I don't know if I've said it on this podcast before, but sometimes when we talk to young people about the diagnosis, we say things like, one's not better than the other. You know, neurotypical people are Xboxes, neurodivergent people are PlayStations. Xboxes and PlayStations one's not better than the other.
They're just different.
They're just different. Yeah. And you can't necessarily play an Xbox game on a PlayStation.
Oh, yeah, nice. Okay.
And you can't do that. So sometimes, so if you're a PlayStation and you've just been trying to have Xbox games played, you're going to feel, oh my God, I'm a crap gaming system. Nothing works. Nothing works on me. But if suddenly someone goes to you, oh, don't worry, you don't need those games, you need these games.
Yeah.
And they give you those games and you start to play those games and you're working really well, it makes sense. So if people can start to have that decision in their, you know, in their lives, they can recognize those things. They can ask for reasonable adaptations. They can understand why they struggle. They can really hone in on their strengths. Then I think that's where you can have that massive impact. And that's one of the reasons I feel the luckiest person in the world to do the job that I do, and feel extremely honored to listen to people's stories and hopefully give them not the label isn't for me.
It's not about the label. The label's for everybody else, isn't it? Yeah.
It's about giving them understanding and giving them the confidence and the freedom to be who they are.
Yeah. That is so true, Freya. That's so lovely. And what a shame that some people miss out on that, and they do have to have a later one. I mean, better late than never, obviously.
Better late than never.
And you know, times are changing, aren't they?
They are indeed. And I think we'll see. I think the more that we understand about neurodiversity, the more that we'll understand there are probably, you know, the estimates at the moment, the research is suggesting that 1 in 6 people are neurodivergent in some way.
Yeah.
Whether that's autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, you know, any of those things. So the more that you can then see, actually, this is just a different way of being. This is just a different operating system.
Yeah. Just a different game.
Just a different game. And if we can make schools, workplace environments more universally flexible by design, then, you know, lots of people will be able to benefit from those changes.
I know. Gosh, that would be good. Wouldn't it be great if it was part of the teaching degree? And by the way, it may be, by the way, I'm just accused
it's not,
teachers.
Sadly. So, so many teachers that I speak
Wouldn't you think that would be like a bit of the basics, especially nowadays?
Yeah.
Because you can't teach somebody that you don't know what their learning style is. So if you're, do you know what I mean? I don't understand how that isn't already a thing.
So I think the last few teachers that I've spoke to who on their teacher training either had a day or a half day about understanding neurodivergence and understanding this condition. So that's something that, you know, obviously would love to change. And I think that would be so much. So I think teachers would welcome it as well.
Oh
so
my
many
gosh,
teachers
yeah.
that I speak to, they're like, oh, I'd love to know more. I'd love to be
Yeah.
able to think about those. Or I've done stuff in my own time
Yeah.
to learn about this.
Yeah. Because I know a lot of teachers that really know a lot because their own children as well.
Yeah.
You know, have been diagnosed or they've been diagnosed themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh
But
yeah, I've
then on the
assessed
flip
some
side-
fabulous teachers
Yeah.
who are very neurodivergent, who are able to create the most creative lessons and those things because they've sort of thought outside the box and done something a little bit
and they've
different.
embraced it rather than fought it.
Yeah.
I know. How lovely. One day, hey, hopefully one day.
One day indeed.
When you change the law, Freya.
I want to change the world.
Yeah.
One person at a time.
Yes.
One podcast at a time.
Yeah,
Dawn,
one podcast at a time.
Yeah.
One codpast at a time.
Indeed,
Yes.
indeed. I think have we got anything else, Dawn, that we need to think about with children and young people and getting it? Oh, how you might talk to a young person once they've got the diagnosis.
Oh, how do you tell them? Yeah, do you know, actually, this caused a lot of anxiety for me. I thought I'm a very open mum. My kids know about my diagnosis. But actually, I really struggled. I was extremely anxious having to tell my youngest that she was neurodivergent. I really struggled with that. And with my eldest. Luckily, my son, they told him in CAMS.
Yeah.
They told him and I was like, oh, phew, that was easy. But yeah, I actually did struggle. I mean, obviously, once the words came out, it was fine.
Yeah.
And with my youngest, my eldest was there and I said, will you help me? She said, of course I will. And we actually all spoke about it's okay because so is she and so is she. And you know, it was actually really lovely. And we were all laughing about something. I can't remember, but it was just a 10-minute chat and that was it. She was fine with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a big part of me thinking, how do I tell them?
Yeah.
Because it's a big news, isn't it?
It is big news. It is, and you don't want to kind of you want to kind of pitch it right. Yeah. So when we talk to families, we offer them lots of different options about how to do feedback. Yeah. So and if you're going for a private assessment, if you're going for a CAMS assessment, whatever, you really need to think about as a family how you want feedback to go, and be your best advocate. Think about what you want and what's going to work best for your family. So we say we can offer feedback to parents first. Yeah. And then parents can feed back to their own children like you did, which I think was a beautiful case, because you've got so much knowledge, you've got all of that lovely sensitivity, and
it leaves you when you're having to say the news.
But I think that was the right decision for you and your family to do it that way, and I think that's a lovely thing to do. Yeah. We have some families who want the young person has maybe been really instrumental in seeking the assessment. The young person has asked for the assessment themselves, or they're really into it. They want to know. Yeah. So we say, if parents are happy, we'll do the diagnosis as a family. Yeah. So we'll meet together, mum, dad, and the child that we're assessing, and we'll do the diagnosis feedback all together. Mm-hmm. Whenever we do that, I always make sure we use very child-friendly language. It's all very affirmative. It's all very positive. Giving people a chance to explain. One of my favourite diagnostics that I ever did was a teenager with a teenage girl who, when she they wanted to have it as a family, so we did it as a family. And when I did, the first thing, she turned to her mum and dad and she went, "In your face, I told you I was autistic." And I just thought that she was just absolutely wonderful. Yeah. And then she went, "And ADHD to boot, mic drop." I was just like, she is just a legend. So you can have it all together as a family and sometimes that can be helpful because you've got the clinician there to scaffold some of those conversations. Yeah. Sometimes families might like to do it differently. So you might have feedback to mum and dad first, and then you might say, actually, mum and dad are going to tell the young person, but then the young person may want the time with the clinician to explore it. Yeah. So the young person might go, "So my mum's told me I'm autistic. What the heck does that mean? Can you help me understand that?" And we've got loads of different books that we use, loads of different stories, loads of different kind of tasks that I can do. Sometimes I've done it where I've drawn it out for a young person. So there's loads of different things that you can do. Yeah. And then another option, which we've only started to have recently, and I love this option. So I've had a few teenagers recently who, when I've been talking to them saying, how do you want your feedback to go? A few teenagers have said, "This is my diagnosis. This is my thing. I want you to tell me first, and then you can tell my mum and dad." Or I want to tell my mum and dad.
Yeah.
And obviously, if mums and dads and carers are happy with that, we go with that. So we do whatever feedback works for the family. But for me, I think it's about trying to explain, why the diagnosis has been made. So that's always the first thing that I'd say. So, and I always say to people as well, because when I was a trainee, I observed several different people doing diagnostic feedback, lots of different clinicians. And one of the things that used to irritate me is we'd start the feedback session and families would be on their seat and the clinician would go through all the different information and they'd be like, oh, and this and this and this. And they'd only get to the conclusion kind of like 20 minutes in and you could see how long people had waited for. So that was always something that I thought when I was qualified.
Yeah, you need to say it straight away.
I'm not going to kind of like do the preamble. I'm going to go, right, this is the conclusion.
Yeah.
You now know this. Right, now let me tell, now let's go back. Now I can tell you why we made all of that. And I can do all of that. And sometimes it's about just helping people understand some of those differences as well.
Yeah. So one of the concerns actually with my youngest, Freya, is she was scared about who would know.
Okay.
Would the doctors know? Would her friends know? Would the teachers know? That was like a really big concern, especially compared to one of my other children who didn't really care, didn't even enter. So what happens with the diagnosis? Does anybody have to know?
I love that question. So yes and no. Yeah. Okay. So it's a really so it's an ambivalent answer. So I always say to young people this is your diagnosis. It is up to you who you tell. So in terms of friendships, you decide who you tell, who you don't tell. And I've worked with lots of different children over the years who do lots of different things. So I've worked with children who literally couldn't wait the next day to go in and tell everyone at school. Well, like, I had my diagnosis and I've got ADHD and I'm going to tell everyone all about it. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I worked with one child who mum sent us like an email probably about 6 months after the assessment. And he had done a PowerPoint presentation for his whole class about what his autism means and how he is autistic. And I was just thinking, what an absolute legend.
I love that. That's so autistic as well, isn't it? I love a PowerPoint.
So he did that for his, when I just think stuff like that is fabulous because, again, it's helping his classmates understand him. It's him taking control of his diagnosis. But yeah, fabulous. So I love stuff like that. I think, there are some children out there that love, shout, as there are adults. There are adults out there who love to, talk about their neurodiversity on podcasts. Yeah. Imagine that. But there are also people who it's their diagnosis or that, it's a very private thing. They don't want anybody to know. So they might, if they come privately to have an assessment, they might not ever tell anybody else. They might only ever find out themselves and they might just have that information themselves. I generally say it's really useful to tell your GP. So it's useful for your GP to know that you'll have a neurodivergent diagnosis. It's useful if you're to tell school. So we always suggest it's important to tell school, and you can do that in lots of ways. So we always include school recommendations within our report. So I suggest to our parents who've just had a diagnosis, they're a young person, regardless of what age the young person is, arrange a meeting with either your class teacher or your SENCO and go and talk to school about, my child's just had a diagnosis. These are the recommendations. How are you going to help my child? What are you going to do? What are the things that your school already does for neurodiversity? What kind of, all of those bits. And one line that we've started putting into all our reports, and it's probably been in there for the last 5 years now, but something is we say to all schools again that this is Dawn's diagnosis and it is Dawn's diagnosis to share when she feels ready. So the teacher might know, and you wouldn't have thought I'd have had to write this into a report, but we wrote this into a report specifically because a teacher broke a child's confidentiality and a teacher said in the class, oh, this is because you're ADHD.
Wow.
And the child hadn't told anyone else. Didn't really want, so teachers have to sometimes be careful about how they don't talk about diagnoses to children. So I think it is a yes and no question. So one, depending on how the person feels, I think it's also really important then to think about who needs to know in that child's life to really understand them. So again, if they do extracurricular activities, if they do clubs, all those things, it might be really important for their swim teacher or their dance teacher to know look, they're really going to struggle in this situation, or they're really going to thrive if you do this and help them in this way. So yeah, have a think about who needs to know, why they might need to know. You know, and as a young person gets a little bit older, how can they be part of that discussion? How can they help? You know, how can they maybe help some of their friends understand why they do things a little bit differently? And you know, there's classes of 30 at the moment. There's going to be another neurodivergent child within their classroom.
Oh, and the rest.
Yeah, and help them see that they might be very different from that child, and that's okay, or they might be very similar, and you know, that's okay as well. So
oh, good answer.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. I think we've covered.
I think we have. So
we've covered a lot, haven't we?
We have covered a lot today. Hopefully you guys have all found it useful. If you have any questions or comments, please, you know, write them for us. Please let us know. Follow us on our Instagram, which is Chaotic Clarity Podcast.
Yep. Something like that.
You'll find
something like that.
Something like that. And yeah, so thank you so much for listening. If you have any ideas as well for topics you might like us to discuss, or any other series, and we can do a whole series like we've done on this one, again, let us know.
We should do another series. We should do a series with guests on.
If you would like to be a guest.
Oh, they'll be queuing at the door.
If you would like to be a guest, please let us know. I know I've talked to lots of people recently as I've been doing diagnoses who've said, oh, I'd love to come and talk about my experience. So yeah, if you're listening, you know who you are, and we'll come and chat to you soon.
Yes. So like and subscribe. I've always wanted to say that. We don't say that. We should say that.
I think we have started.
Have we? Obviously, that's for the YouTube. Oh, and on the podcast. Yeah.
Like, subscribe, join our Instagram, follow along. We'd love to have you. The more we want a real chaotic clarity community.
Oh yeah, chaotic community.
Chaotic community.
Yeah.
Indeed. Right. Well, it's been fabulous talking to you as always, Dawn. I've had an amazing time. I think we've covered some really important things.
I know. Ditto, baby.
We have been chaotic. We have been clear.
Yep. Well, it's been a good one today. Thanks, Freya.
Thanks, Dawn. It's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
See you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.